There we go. So again, welcome to our March PA Student-Centered Learning Network meeting. And here's kind of, again, the short agenda for today. We're going to get an introduction to a new tool that's going to be hopefully real valuable for you. If you were at our last meeting in January, you got an introduction to our Student-Centered Learning Blueprint. Fantastic document with lots of resources. And you're going to find out today how that can be a useful tool for you and for your school district to navigate through. So you're going to get an introduction from some of our team members about the Blueprint Navigator tool. We have two districts here to do some storytelling from Unionville-Chadds Ford School District in Chester and Delaware County, as well as Ephrata Area School District. And they're going to be sharing out a little bit of some of the practices and the work that they've been doing within their school districts around student-centered learning. You will also then have an opportunity to choose a breakout room where you can go into for some more question and answering sessions with those that are presenting today. And then following that time, we have some guest presenters, Moran and Socol. We'll get an introduction to the work that they do when they present today, but they have a national perspective on this idea of networking around the state. They've done some work in states like Nevada and Virginia and Kentucky, where different types of networks like the one we're trying to create today they've worked through in the past. So they're going to talk about some of the successes and challenges in doing that, some of the great opportunities you have to bring together a team from your school district, and how you can work through some of the challenges and successes around student-centered learning. So as I mentioned before, this is our great team right here. This is our leadership team that gets together to plan and organize the agendas for each one of our 4 network meetings. This is the third of our 4 network meetings for this school year, and they've been really instrumental in planning out the agendas and will be helping with facilitating today's meeting. So if you haven't already, again, you can see the agenda is listed there at the bottom. We would encourage you to type your name, your district, your title there in there, so you can get a feel for who is joining us today. Because again, these meetings are meant to share information that's happening around the state, but it's also to put you in contact with folks either locally or somewhere across the state that you can make a connection with, who is working through maybe some of the same challenges you are. Maybe they're a little bit ahead in certain areas, and you can kind of reach out to them as a network person who can be really beneficial in getting you potentially some ideas or answers. So not only is this network the folks that I showed earlier, but it's also across the state. Every IU has a point of contact person that's doing the work around student-centered learning. And we will share that list with you again at the end of the meeting today. And if you're interested, we can make sure that connection happens. Not all of the student-centered learning point of contacts will be on today's call, but we can make sure if you need to get in contact with them locally, you can do that, or you can reach out to somebody else in any of our IUs to help you with that. As always, we just want to kind of refresh some of the goals of this network. I shared some of them, and really the purpose of this is to share some of the great practices that are happening around the state, both your neighbors that are happening locally and across Pennsylvania. So the goal really is to create this statewide network. One of the things we've started just this past February is sending out regular newsletters so you can be informed outside of just these 4 network meetings of opportunities that you have around site visits, around new resources that have been added to our OER Commons Hub. So all of those things will continue to be updated to you and coming into your inbox. So you should have received one. If you had registered sometime for the network by around February, you should have gotten our first newsletter, as well as a reminder about this meeting coming to you. So if you have any colleagues you think that would benefit from being part of the network or continually to be updated, that tiny URL that you can see on the screen there will take you to the registration link that will get you all of the updates that will continue to come from our team through our newsletters. Okay, so one of the things I referenced was the exciting resource that you now have available to you. It is in our OER Commons Hub, and it's also linked on today's agenda. It is the Student-Centered Learning Blueprint, which is, again, is a transformative approach to K-12 education and has lots of resources in there for you to examine. And one of the new tools that you now have available to you is the Blueprint Navigator tool. And our colleagues, Tracy Rains and Eric Leck, will be here today to share with you what that new Navigator tool will provide you to do within that blueprint. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and pass it over to either Eric or Tracy.
To Eric, please.
All right, Eric, and you should have screen sharing ability.
Hello, everyone. As he's getting that pulled up, we would like to thank you again for all being here. We are very excited about this tool. Not sure that's the right screen, Eric. There you go. We're very excited about this tool because when you look at the blueprint is, there's a lot to it. And so we wanted to make sure that we had some help with navigating what that looks like. So this, as mentioned, is the Student-Centered Learning Blueprint Navigator. It's located in OER Commons, as linked there, as is all of our resources. Please remember to jump in there and become a member of OER Commons. I am Tracy Rains. I'm a virtual learning specialist with IU8. And Eric, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Eric Leck. I am Director of Curriculum and Instruction and Educational Technologies at Carbon-Lehigh Intermediate Unit.
All right, so let's get started with this. As mentioned, last time we were here, we spoke about the learning blueprint, the Student-Centered Learning Blueprint. If you recall, the Student-Centered Learning Blueprint contains 5 system components. We have administration and leadership, learning models, curriculum design and development, teaching and learning, and also community outreach. Within each of those 5 components, we also have essential actions, guiding questions, benchmark statements, examples of evidence, and a continuum of practice. Now, as mentioned, that can be a lot, but having it broken down into those components is very helpful. And moving forward with this Navigator tool will be even more helpful. Eric?
Sure, and as Tracy mentioned, that Student-Centered Learning Blueprint really, that title should be very meaningful. We need that blueprint to help design and build what we're doing in our school systems, and that's really the intent, is to utilize those system components and the essential actions, guiding questions, and benchmarks to help in that build. Oops. However, as you look through that blueprint, the nearly 60-page document, very long document, you'll notice one key page that we consistently refer to when we're working with school districts is on page 4. And it's really about navigating that journey and utilizing the blueprint tool, where after our last session in January, we encouraged schools to start gathering your team. Really think about who you need to be part of that conversation for student-centered learning and begin the conversation. That's a great place to start with in one of the resources in our OER Commons group, our student-centered learning definitions. Take a look at those with your team. Really dissect them and get to a heart of what they mean to you in your school system. And then number 3 is review promising practices. Now, we know we have a great resource, again, found in our OER Commons group called the Unleashing Potential, which really gives some stories of schools that have programs or components of their system that are leading towards student-centered learning. We also know that there's a number of site visits going on where you can really kind of get the opportunity to see these promising practices in action. So we want to encourage those. But then step 4 is where the next meat of action in your school should happen, and that is to assess your current practices. And as Tracy mentioned, with the blueprint, that can become very overwhelming. There's a lot of guiding questions and benchmark statements that really could become confusing, and each of them could have its own depth of conversation. So with that said, we wanted to build a tool that'll help with that self-assessment. And that's where the Blueprint Navigator comes in. It's going to allow you to work in tandem with the Blueprint. Okay, it's a Navigator, so it'll help you work with the new Blueprint to really guide your self-assessment. Again, this is something that should be done in teams. This isn't something that is done in isolation, where you evaluate not only where you are right now, your current status, but then can return to that Navigator tool to assess your progress. How are things going with your implementation? Initially, this tool could be utilized to prioritize an action plan. What do we need to work on most right now? How can we set some steps around those items and move forward? And then as you begin your implementation, or as you are within the work you are doing, you can continue to come back to this Navigator tool to see where your improvement is occurring. It should allow for that framework for continuous improvement. So again, we talk about it as this is kind of a team approach. You're going to have your Blueprint as well as your Navigator available to you. You want to make sure that you understand them both. You know, that Blueprint is going to set some foundations for you, help you understand the language that's being used, the components of your system that you should be looking at. The Navigator is going to allow you to do that self-assessment, take notes, bring your evidence to the table, and then set some priorities moving forward. Just for those of you that have not navigated OER Commons before, we continue to provide those links to our group in OER Commons for PA Student-Centered Learning. When you select that Blueprint or the Blueprint Navigator links, they will take you to the resource page. You, of course, want to view the resource. It'll open in a new tab. We provided some background overview information and give you a space where you can either download or view this tool in your browser. So when we click on view the tool in your browser, obviously it will open. It is a PDF document. Make those printouts if you need to, or download it and save as you need as well. You'll notice that the first and foremost, the Blueprint Navigator is a much shorter document, and we begin by providing an overview of the Blueprint Navigator itself. Its purpose, reminding of the different components of our student-centered learning blueprint, and then provides our instructions on how to use for assessment. So I'm going to kind of come back here and talk about that self-assessment steps. I know some of the people in the room here are some of my friends that work in school improvement. It's something that I'm closely tied to very frequently. So some of these steps you're going to say, wow, this is really similar to school improvement steps. This might be similar to comprehensive planning process steps that you go through. So I really want to encourage you to think about those steps that you already take in continuous improvement in your schools and utilize that process in what you're doing for student-centered learning. In fact, even if you can fold them together, that might be a very reasonable and rational thing to do. So, of course, you're going to be working with your team. You're going to set your appropriate norms for how you go about the work of self-assessment, having that open and honest conversation about what's happening in your school system. You want to bring evidence to the table. You know in the blueprint, one of the components is suggested pieces of evidence to let you know that implementation is occurring, that you're meeting the benchmark of that blueprint. So you want to bring evidence to the table when you're having this discussion. Then you're going to focus on one component at a time. We know within each component there are multiple parts. So you want to look at it as a whole. Within those different parts, what is going on in your system? What evidence do you have? And have that discussion for those pieces. Then you're going to come to a consensus on a rating. Don't worry, I'm going to show you the rating tool in a minute. But make sure you add notes as you are coming to consensus on that rating. Different members of your team may have different thoughts about why they are rating your system in a certain way within a component, and you want to make sure you have those notes captured. You're going to repeat that same process for each of the different components of our blueprint. Once you complete, you're going to take a look at that full self-assessment and say, where do we want to prioritize our work? And each system is going to have a different approach to that. If your capacity is that, hey, we can only work on one component at a time to really build our system, then that's where you're going to make some action steps, start building your action plan. If your system says, you know what, we have multiple teams here, we can break into sub-teams based on the group that we have, maybe we can work on a couple of things at once. So again, that prioritization is going to be very, very individualized to your school system. And then, of course, make sure you start by taking some notes on what those action steps will be, but you may need to then come back and really develop a much more full action plan. Now, as I mentioned, one of the components of this is going to be doing a self-assessment rating. Now, self-assessment means really this is internalized to your system. So you're going to be making the decisions on how you rate for your school. But we've built a four-prong self-assessment, not yet developing, operational, and fully embedded, with a suggested scale on those ratings for your prioritization. You'll also note in the Blueprint Navigator, once you get to the point of, hey, we're just checking for progress, we do have a progress scale as well that follows the same not yet developing, operational, fully embedded. But you'll see, for example, as you're looking at each component, you're going to determine, is this component in a state where it is developing? Is it operational? Or is it fully embedded? And if it's developing, you're going to say, hey, we know that some initial work has started. Efforts might be inconsistent. Maybe we're seeing some different things happening in different spaces within our system. And systems and stakeholder engagement need further development. So that tells us that, okay, this is a component that needs some further development. And the action there might be, let's strengthen the alignment of our resources, the processes. Let's address some gaps in the execution of what's happening. So again, we provide some samples there, but there's going to be variance based on what's happening in your system. Oops. So with that said, Tracy and I wanted to lead a little bit of a practice scenario for you. We are going to focus in our blueprint on the teaching and learning component. We're not going to ask you to go through a whole rating today. That would take a bit more time than we have. And I will share that the sample that we are going to provide for you is a very brief conversation. We know that your live conversations about each of the components may take much longer and may bring much more evidence to the table. Okay?
I don't know who this Tracy is you speak of. I am Dr. Plum.
Yes. So at this point, we're going to jump into our kind of case study here. This is strengthening student-centered learning for teaching and learning, that teaching and learning component. And for those of you that may not be as familiar with the teaching and learning component, I'm just going to say in the blueprint on page 30 begins teaching and learning. And this includes things like our knowledge of students, the instructional strategies that we are using to implement student-centered learning, our subject matter expertise in the way that we are connecting students to relevant, highly connected content, our assessment modes, making sure that we are gathering data to support student-centered learning, and of course, creating that inclusive learning environment for student-centered learning. So that's what we're focused on. That whole of the teaching and learning component, which includes those specific components. So as you listen, we're going to be talking about Westview High School. You have two team members in the room today, Dr. Plum, who is the principal, and Mr. Mustard, who is an instructional coach. So I'm going to let things get started and ask Dr. Plum to begin our meeting.
Hello, Mr. Mustard. I wanted to check in on how our teachers are adapting to student-centered learning instructional strategies. We've encouraged more personalized inquiry-based learning, but I'm not sure how consistently it's being applied.
That's a great question, Dr. Plum. You know, we have several teachers who are doing a great job incorporating student choice and engagement strategies, especially in social studies and science. I've observed classrooms where students are working on collaborative projects and engaging in problem-based learning. But in other classrooms, I'm still seeing a lot of direct instruction with very little student interaction.
Right, I've noticed that too. Some of our teachers are shifting their role from lecturer to facilitator, but many are still hesitant. They're comfortable with traditional instruction, of course, and worry that giving students too much control will lead to off-task behavior or gaps in content coverage.
No, that's understandable. I think part of the challenge is that while teachers know about student-centered learning strategies, they haven't had enough support to integrate them effectively. Professional development we've done, it's introduced concepts and strategies, but hasn't really provided that hands-on work or coaching to help our teachers apply it in those specific areas.
Yeah, that makes sense. If we want to move forward, we need to provide more modeling and feedback. Maybe we can have some of our teachers who are already using these strategies share best practices with their colleagues.
I love that idea. Maybe we can schedule some peer observations so teachers can see the student-centered learning in action. We know that when you see it happening in someone else's classroom, it makes it so much less intimidating.
Agreed. So based on what we're seeing, where do you think we stand in the component area of teaching and learning?
End scene. We'll do our bows. Oscars can come later. But we want to ask you in the group here today, thinking about that blueprint navigator and our rating scale of not yet, where there's been no measurable progress towards student-centered learning, developing, where there's some initial work, but implementation may be inconsistent, operational, where strategies are in place but need refinement or expansion, or fully embedded, where student-centered teaching is fully integrated and sustainable. Specifically in that teaching and learning component, pop in the chat what number you think that this school is at. Again, with the limited evidence that you were provided.
Remember, this is not based on our acting skills. This is just based on the content.
All right, we're seeing a lot of twos come into the chat, and that was something that we definitely expected to hear.
We were
But
hoping.
part of this conversation isn't just about what you rate it, but why. So certainly want to ask if you'd like to put into the chat, or if you'd like to unmute and share, what did you hear? What was the evidence you heard that says this is probably at a rating of 2 in the teaching and learning scale? And you're welcome to paraphrase.
Inconsistent.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric and Megan. Inconsistent implementations, more strength in science and social studies versus other subject areas, being unsure of the thoughtful implementation. Not all teachers are there yet. So we're hearing some of the terms already, and you might expect that the evidence coming to the table may have been walkthrough data, right? Maybe we have, hey, this percentage of walkthroughs incorporated these strategies, right? So think about that, what that evidence could have looked like on paper as well, when you're thinking about this sort of component. But that's what we're looking at. That's what this tool is asking you to do. It's asking you to bring that evidence to the table, have those discussions, focus on each component to determine what ratings exist for those components. And then take it to the next step. If Dr. Plum and Mr. Mustard at Westview High really decide that teaching and learning is where they need to focus their priority attention, what next steps might they make? And they talked about them already. They had that as part of the conversation. You find that sometimes in the conversation and in the process, what you need to do comes out in the wash. So, you might have heard they're thinking about some coaching models or peer observations, or asking some of the teachers that are putting this in place to share or maybe lead during next professional learnings. So there's a lot of pieces that could be next steps there, right? So wanted to give you a chance to kind of practice what this could look like. And again, think about what that's going to look like across components with probably a larger team than just Dr. Plum and Mr. Mustard, so that you can continue moving things forward. In fact, we encourage a larger team to really be identifying this. And so as you're utilizing that blueprint navigator in tandem with your blueprint tool, there are definitely different ways or approaches you can take to this. And I have 2 lists on the screen for you where you could maybe use the Navigator tool to make all of your initial assessments across all your component areas. Or maybe you customize your experience based on current programs that are in need of evaluation. Okay, this tool could be utilized in the way that makes most sense to you. You can take the notes and evidence that you have and focus on developing an action plan for one high priority area. Or maybe your team is built in a way that you can divide into smaller project teams and take action in several different component areas at once. You can align your prioritization with the Navigator tool to things that are going on with school improvement, comprehensive planning, or other strategic planning that's happening in your school. Or you can create specific intentional focus on student-centered learning transformation and really push in on that being the crux of improvement in your schools. Either route that you take, the last piece of this is make sure you're reconvening, come back to that Navigator tool and reassess. Take a look at the progress ratings that are in that Navigator tool and see if you're making the progress that you're hoping to make. So with that said, just like last time when we presented the Navigator, we gave you some call to action, next steps. Your next steps with the Navigator tool is get together with that student-centered learning team. If you haven't done it yet, get together with them now. Familiarize yourself with the blueprint components, specifically looking at those essential actions, benchmark statements, and guiding questions. Have that conversation about what does this mean to you when you read the language on the paper? What does it mean to you? Gather your evidence and observations across those component areas. Complete the self-assessment. This is a great place for your IU POC to provide support. They can help guide you through that self-assessment, ask some key questions as you're going through. Prioritize components for focus and growth in your system. Develop an action plan with your SMART goals, short-term and long-term actions, and then commit to reconvening your team to assess your progress. So I'll pause, see if there are any questions about the Navigator tool, the resource that's provided, or the process that we intended when we built this tool.
And while we have site visits set up, if there's other sites that you are interested in seeing, or maybe a district that you've heard about, please feel free to reach out and we can see what we can schedule with those other districts. If you're like, oh, I heard so-and-so is doing something really awesome, but they haven't signed up, let us know, because we are always looking for more awesomeness to share with everyone.
Well, Tracy and I have our emails on here. You're certainly welcome to reach out to us with questions you have about the Navigator tool. And we can't, of course, complete any discussion of our Blueprint tool or now our Blueprint Navigator tool without giving special thanks to our guides on the side, our consultants that have been supporting this work, Dr. Peggy Schooling and Dr. Rebecca Heiser. I think I saw Rebecca on today, so I hope that we've represented the work well. But we always want to make sure we thank them because they have been alongside helping us, bringing research to the table, letting us really dive in and hone these resources to make them usable across our school systems.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, both Tracy and Eric, for sharing all the work that you've done behind that. So can't encourage you enough. If you haven't had the opportunity to look through the blueprint, now's an excellent time with that added resource of having the Navigator in order to help you through that. So we're going to transition now into the next part of our morning agenda based upon your feedback from our meetings. You really enjoy hearing from other districts about some of the work that they're doing around different school districts related to student-centered learning. So we're really excited to have two groups as storytellers here for you. The Unionville-Chadds Ford School District is going to be presenting first about some of the work that they've been doing. And then second, we will have the group from Ephrata Area School District be presenting as well. So I'm going to have folks from each of those different areas provide the opportunity to introduce them. So I'm going to start with my colleague, Josh Ecker from Chester County IU to introduce our first group today. Hey, Josh.
Hey, Tim, thank you. So as Tim said, I'm introducing Unionville-Chadds Ford School District, which is guided by their Portrait of a Graduate. And this Portrait of a Graduate emphasizes inspiring students to learn, building character, practicing self-care, contributing to society, and succeeding in life. Recognizing that high school students were stressed and overscheduled, the district implemented innovative approaches to meet students where they are and provide what they need for success. This student-centered initiative includes two key components. First, blended learning opportunities, and second, a restructured schedule featuring lunch and learn periods. By partnering with Chester County IU, the district has developed 41 blended courses that allow students to complete coursework while maintaining balance in their schedules. So today, I'm happy to say that we're joined by Amy Jenkins, principal of Unionville High School, and Mike Audevard, director of curriculum and instruction for the district, and they will share how their student-centered approach has transformed learning experiences at Unionville High School.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Amy Jenkins, the principal at Unionville High School. I'll let Mike introduce himself, and then we can go ahead and get started.
You bet. Thanks for the introduction, Josh. My name is Mike Audevard. I'm the Director of Curriculum and Instruction in Unionville-Chadds Ford, and we're looking forward to just being able to share some of the great things that are happening in Unionville-Chadds Ford, specifically Unionville High School. As Josh said, a lot of our work is really based on our idea of Portrait of a Graduate, and I think having a focus on student-centered anything is really recognizing that our kids are coming to us in with a lot of different needs. And regardless of the number of students you have in your district, you have 10,000 students in your district, you have 10,000 different students in your district, and no two are exactly alike. So just figuring out how we can meet all of their needs and support them as best we can. There's been a number of initiatives over the past couple of years. We've really focused on a combination of academic support and intervention and wellness for kids and frankly for staff. We've had a number of great wellness initiatives, from wellness days to recovery periods after testing sessions that Amy can speak to a little bit better, but just trying to take the full kid into account so that when they walk to our doors, they're ready to learn and ready to succeed. But this is all the talking that I want to do, because Amy is truly the star of the show, and all the things and initiatives she has just owned and run with, and she's just a phenomenal high school principal. So my job is just to try not to mess things up for her and get in her way on a given day. So with that, Amy, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can brag on the high school a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, Mike. So in 2015, I transitioned to Unionville High School as an assistant principal. And we were a new administrative team. We had a new principal at that time, and myself as a new assistant principal. And then we had one assistant principal who kind of provided a lot of background knowledge of the district, I'll say, to kind of help us and guide us. And we started looking at things in 2015 and just looking at our high school schedule. And at that time, school start time was coming up, and we were looking at, moving our school start time later, but still meeting hours and still working with students. So we moved school start time. And then we did that for a few years, and we realized that that really wasn't enough. We had to do something else, and we had to do something more for our students and to meet them where they are. So I was an instructional technology coach and worked with the CFF grant and have my master's in instructional systems and instructional technology. So we started talking about what can we do and how can we use that. And I started looking into blended learning courses and online courses, and could we offer them as part of our high school schedule? So we took that and presented to our district office at that time. Mike was not in that seat. It was Tim Hoffman, who is now our assistant superintendent, and John Nolan, who is our retired, was our assistant superintendent. We started talking about blended learning options and what could we do. And we realized first that before we could even offer blended learning options, we had to provide professional development to our teachers. So we had to really partner with someone to learn about best practices, to learn how they could take their lessons and really convert them into a blended online course. So we vetted numerous companies that could provide that professional training for us. And we decided that the Chester County IU really had the best program for us and was able to meet our needs and what we were looking for, and to really partner with us to provide that support, because we all know that a one-time shop of professional development is not what any of us need, and it's that ongoing piece of it and the supportive piece of it that is important. So we targeted our first group, put together professional development, and really worked with 7 teachers to say, we want you to pilot one blended learning course the following year. So we went through a whole year of training, curriculum development time, and really examining our courses and how could we keep it so that our students were able to maintain the rigor that we have and that we expect, but also meet the needs of their schedules. And I can tell you from a high school seat, what we were seeing is that we were pooling students for transportation for athletic events and for different events, and students were missing 9th period at a time. And we also have students at Unionville that do a lot of outside extracurriculars. So we have a lot of students leaving for equestrian training that aren't necessarily district run opportunities, but they're still leaving and using early dismissals for ice hockey, equestrian training, gymnastics, field hockey, and they were leaving school 9th period as well. So we really struggled with students wanting to take AP Stat and it running 9th period because they missed so much class time. And then we also had students who had some medical disabilities and some different things that they were coming in late after first period. So we really started targeting 1st and 9th period of looking at blended learning courses. Our blended learning courses we run on a 6-day cycle. So our students are in the building, brick and mortar 3 days, and online or doing their blended work for 3 days. So it's an every other day format. So they're in class ACE and they're online BDF days. So what does that mean? It allowed a lot of flexibility for our students. We had students that had a study hall, let's say 2nd period, they took a blended learning course 1st period, and they had POTS or PANDA or another medical disability that they needed that time to come in late. So instead of coming in at 8 o'clock in the morning, they now didn't need to be in the building until 9:42 for 3 days out of the cycle. And what we found is that since it was an every other day format, they could come in on those 3 days at 8 o'clock. They pushed themselves, they made it so that they could come in at 8 and then do their online work and come in at 9:42 on the other 3 days. The same thing with students that were leaving for different opportunities and sporting events. Now they didn't necessarily miss 6 out of 6 of the instructional days. And it was like, you could take a lot of your classes and we could schedule AP Stat and we could put things 1st and 9th, which if you've ever built a master schedule, you know, the second you put one constraint in, you kind of blow up your whole schedule. And with performing arts and special ed, they pretty much dictate your schedule anyway. So you throw in one extra component of, we can't run this AP course 9th period, and you're looking at a schedule that like is very difficult to meet the needs of all your kids in every course that they want. So this allowed that greater flexibility in our schedules. So we did that. The first year that we ran courses, it was a big sell to our community, more so than our kids. Our kids loved the idea. They were like, this is great. We're going to get practice for college when we only have to take courses on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But our community and our parents were like, pump the brakes. We want them in school 6 out of 6. We want them there full time. So it was a lot of communication to our families, as well as it's the same rigor that they're going to get in a brick and mortar course. We stand by that. We believe that. We've pulled our data. You can look at our AP scores. You can look at our PSAT scores, our Keystone scores. They're consistent, whether it's a brick and mortar course or a blended learning course. We maintain that, and we truly believe in that. So that first year of offering a course, we often run it with low enrollment. We'll run it with 4 kids, 6 kids, which we typically would not do. But we truly believe that once it gets that first year, it's going to then jump in, and the next year it's going to take off. So for example, since 2018, I think was our first time of offering the courses, we've slowly built on that. the last, I would say, and Mike can probably back me up on this, 2 to 3 years, we've offered probably 4 to 6 new blended course options every year. So the last probably 3-4 years, we've jumped like 18, 20 courses. And now we offer a total of 41 blended courses and multiple sections of those courses here at Brick and Mortar. One of the other, I think, most important pieces for us is that we truly believe that a blended course can be for our first level course or for our AP courses. We don't believe, oh, you know what, you're a really smart kid and you take AP courses, so we should just offer blended learning for you. That's not it at all. All of our students can be successful. All of our students are showing success and are succeeding, whether it's from our first level students, our academic level students, or our AP students. So we do offer blended learning courses at all levels. We offer them in all content areas. I can tell you that it's a little more difficult, not as big a sell in our science courses when our teachers have to do labs on the days that they're in building, but we do offer science courses as well. It's probably one of our biggest sells is our business courses. We offer every business course in an online or blended learning format as well. Our kids love taking their business courses that way, including AP Comp Sci and AP Principles. We offer AP Stat, Social Studies, English, you name it across the board, we offer it. And I think one of the biggest things that we've done is even over the last 8 years, we still believe in providing professional development and best practices for our teachers as well, right? So we are constantly evaluating and looking at our courses and saying to our teachers, what new tools are out there? What do we need to do? What do you need professional development on? And building that professional development and providing it to our students. Mike, I feel like I've talked a lot. I'm not quite sure if people have questions, what else you want to know about. I can tell you that I truly believe it's one of the best things that we offer at our high school. It meets our needs for our students who are overscheduled, who are stressed, who have a ton of other things on their plate, because what happens is that it almost gives them an opportunity to breathe and to take a deep breath. And then with that too, right around the same time, we've also started Lunch and Learn, which is our high school schedule of an hour a day of pretty much an open campus. Students cannot leave campus, but they have an hour to eat lunch or to go and work and see a teacher or walk the track, play basketball, lift weights, do whatever they want to do. So I think the combination of those two things have really helped us to really put our students first when it comes to the scheduling piece, their stress level, their emotional regulation piece of pulling it all together has really helped us. Tim, Josh, do you want to?
Yeah, thanks so much, Amy and Mike. We really appreciate you sharing that story. After our next presentation, I'll encourage you, if you have those questions for Amy, which I have a few myself, I would love to ask for her. You'll have the opportunity to join a breakout room, either with the Unionville folks or with our Ephrata Area School District, to ask them any follow-up questions related to what they presented today. So thank you so much for that with Mike and Amy. And we're going to transition into our next district spotlight today, and my colleague Megan Smith is going to introduce them.
Good morning. So I am really excited to introduce Ephrata Area. We have the instruction and engagement coaches here with us. And when we were looking at the blueprint and looking at all of those different components, we were trying to look at our districts and saying, you know, so many of our districts are doing amazing things. Who is doing something that we want to be able to share? So we have some in our Unleashing Learner booklet for you to check out. We had one last time that we were together as well. And Ephrata is really doing some exciting things with prioritizing professional development. So the instruction engagement coaches are going to explain the 4 main shifts in professional learning that they have worked on to move the district instructional model forward. So I'm excited to pass it on to you guys.
All right. Thanks, Megan. Thanks, everybody. It's great to be here with you this morning. As mentioned, we're coming to you from Ephrata, Pennsylvania, which is in northern Lancaster County. We serve about 4,000 students, and we have 8 schools. And from our perspective, Ephrata is all about setting ambitious goals. That really comes from our district vision of achieving success one student at a time and our district leadership. And there are 2 main things that we are aiming for. The first is our portrait of a graduate for our students. And the second is our instructional model, which is our guide for educators. So our Life Ready graduate profile really indicates that we value more than just content knowledge. We're also trying to grow our learners with their skills and dispositions. So things like creativity and critical thinking and resilience and grit. And then our instructional model really shows that we want learning experiences to take place in a student-centered environment aimed at those life-ready targets through personalized instructional techniques and the use of modern learning tools. So we are the instruction and engagement coaches. There are actually 6 of us district-wide. Our elementary counterparts, Ben and Laura, had a prior commitment this morning, but you'll hear from the rest of us. And we're really the ones who are tasked with leading the adult learning that will support that student learning. So as Megan said, we're going to try to, in 10 minutes or less, share with you how we're trying to align the focus of professional learning with the vision of the district while making it engaging for the adult learners we support. And we would love to talk to you for 2 weeks, but instead we're going to just give you the 4 shifts that we think over the course of probably 6 or 8 years have really moved the needle in our district. So the first one is shifting professional learning from an event to ongoing and sustained learning. And probably the starting point for that is the investment of time and resources. Our district calendar really shows that learning is a priority and an expectation. We have a 4-day launch week. We have 5 half-day professional learnings throughout the year, and we have 4 full days. We recognize that the investment and expansion of our coaching team is prioritizing the human resources to support our adults across our system. And we're really proud of the fact that we feel like in Ephrata, everybody learns. We're with staff at least once a month for professional learning. Our administrators district-wide convene monthly for leader learning, and we even support online and face-to-face learning for our support staff, paraeducators, admin assistants, etc. The other thing that we've gradually gotten better at over the years is aligning more of the parts of our system toward our student-centered learning goals. So this year, our district-wide shared goal is that we will intentionally design instructional opportunities for students to demonstrate life-ready knowledge, skills, and dispositions. Our LEA selected measure requires educators to demonstrate that they're doing that as part of their evaluation at least 6 times per marking period. And then that means that our large group, small group, and individual coaching aligns to that goal. Our PLC structure, we call them reflective planning teams. Colleagues work together toward that goal. And we provide other things like book studies and online learning and summer workshops that are aligned to that goal as well. I'm going to kick it over to Laura Mandel for our next shift.
Awesome. So our next professional learning shift is from oversimplified to attainable. And this really came to be because we designed this wonderful roadmap that you can see here. And each of those parts of the roadmap, we were like, we're going to do that in one PL. So instructional shifts, we're going to do that one day, and then everybody's going to have it. Transparency, one time, they're all going to have it. And what we realized when we were saying just fold it in is that we really can't just fold it in because we weren't meeting the needs of staff where they were in the process. And we really weren't providing specific steps to reach the goals. So we moved from simplifying everything to acknowledging that there are multiple pieces to this larger puzzle. And for us, they fall under our intentional design elements. So we have 5 that we include for staff. And what we did was we broke down each one in terms of resources that we could provide, knowing that all 5 work together as a whole. So our dispositions and our skills, we have some look-fors that are specifically used by staff. They keep them right by their desks when they're planning so that we can make sure to incorporate the skills and dispositions within the target, the learning target, so that alignment, and then within the strategy choices that we're making. And then knowing that each piece is part of a larger part, we designed a template to support planning purposes and designing learning. So the full template and the variations that we share with staff are really a driving force in lesson planning and designing and in the reflective planning time that teachers have as a guide to help them take action in supporting a design of learning for students. So what we've really learned is that our starting point truly does matter, and we weren't truly aware of our current reality. We just sort of thought, based on some general concepts or, the exit tickets that we saw, that we knew where we were. But what we realized was each step that we were making really needed to be a lot smaller. Staff needed chunking, they needed to feel success, and the things that they needed to reach our goal were really related to things that we were reading and researching and the things that we had success in our own classrooms with, but we needed to take a step back and realize that each small step matters in going from idea to action. And we always lead with our goal because we ask staff to do that too. And having a firm goal is essential to growth and action. So we like the UDL concept of firm goals, flexible means, focusing on what really matters and having a willingness to be flexible within. So I'm going to kick it over to Brandy for our next shift.
Unmute Brandy.
I'm trying to avoid bells. Shift 3 is moving from theoretical into practical. It is more than just the, hey guys, this is really great, you should totally do it, into providing modeling and opportunities for teachers to dig in. So as coaches, we intentionally design all of our live sessions to model strategies. We put them in action for teachers to feel how they feel, incorporating things like the hot seat, the classic notice and wonder. We've done a word sneak and affinity process, allow them to incorporate, whether it's the serious learning content, sometimes it's fun content to lighten the mood, but allows our adult learners to be more of a participant than an observer, which is exactly what we want for our students too. Each coaching team has our strategies that we model and more in locations that are easily accessible to our teachers so that they can access them during our PL sessions in addition to after or between our sessions. Within things like you'll see on the scrolling GIF, the coach's cookbook, there are more in-depth directions for how to implement those strategies at every click. Several times throughout the year, teachers are tapped to share the awesome work that's happening in their classrooms so that teachers can learn from their colleagues. As coaches, we are happy to support our teachers in any way that they need to feel comfortable to presenting, whether that is a full co-present or just even being in the room as a safety net. So as previously shared, our goal, our shared professional growth goal, was to intentionally design instructional opportunities. So it becomes really important for teachers to have that time to design with the new learning. We are sure to provide a minimum of 45 to 60 minutes that are built into every coach-led PL session. Teachers can choose to work on their own. They could work with their RPT or their reflective planning team, or they can choose to work with a coach. As is previously mentioned, we do have some guidance for them, some structures, some formats in place that can help them do this design time on their own. And I'll lend it to Denny.
All right, thanks, Brandy. All right, on our PL shift number 4, we shifted from something being done to teachers to something being informed by teachers. And by doing that, we had to listen to our staff. One of the ways we listen to staff is through exit tickets after each PL. They know we take these exit tickets seriously, so they do the same. They give us a lot of great feedback on our previous sessions and what they need in future sessions. We also are lucky enough to have an instructional leadership coalition that meets twice a month. It's a K through 12 coalition. So one time they meet all together, K through 12, and then another time that month, our grade bands would meet. And during that time, we learn from each other to support professional learning and our professional growth. They have the opportunity to take instructional risks, reflect on those risks, and share their experience with the other staff in their buildings. And then they lead all our implementations of our strategies to increase our level of instructional engagement and also in student belonging. So they are our boots on the ground group, and we really enjoy working with them. Another way we listen to staff is doing some learning walks, either with or without our admin. During our learning walks, we're looking at the student experience. We're really focusing on the students. This is non-evaluative, and we're just kind of seeing what's going well for teachers and what might they need work toward to increase that student engagement and belonging within their own classrooms. And also, of course, we have conversations with our teachers. We sit down with small groups and individuals and just kind of talk about things that they need from us, things that are going well, and how we can support them. And then that indicates our next step. So we triangulate that evidence through the products we collect, through the observations within the classrooms, and for the conversations we get to have with our teachers, and we listen to what they are learning and what they need. We take that and we use our 7 principles of adult learning. We know adults learn different than students, so we make sure that we're honoring those principles every time we get the opportunity to stand in front of them or sit beside them. And we also reflect back to our shared learning goal from our district vision, and we keep that in the forefront of everything that we do, as the other coaches had explained. So that's our 4th PL shift. We want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk with you during this time. So I'll kick it either back to Tim or Megan.
Thank you so much to both of our districts for sharing. We really appreciate it. Like Tim had said, I'm sure you have lots of questions as you're sitting there. I know I'm taking notes of things that I want to think through and talk about. So Tim is going to explain to us a little bit about what those breakout rooms look like and how you get to ask those questions.
Thank you, Megan. So yeah, we've just opened up 2 breakout rooms. That's going to allow you to select from one of those 2. We really appreciate both teams sharing their stories to us. And just to keep us on schedule, I think we'll keep those breakout rooms to around 8 minutes or so, but it'll give you an opportunity to choose one of them, and they'll be in there to ask any questions that you have specifically on something that they presented to us. So you can go ahead and select one of those breakout rooms. I'll ask the Unionville folks to join the first one, and the Ephrata folks to join number 2. And I'll ask also Josh and Megan to enter those rooms to facilitate any conversations as well. So we'll see you back here in around 8 minutes. If you need any assistance getting into one of those breakout rooms, you can put it in the meeting chat, and we can assign you to the room that you would like to go to. All right, it looks like our breakout rooms have all joined us back here in the main room. Again, I want to give a heartfelt thank you to both of those teams for presenting to the group today and for being willing to answer their questions. I'm guessing those breakout rooms probably could have gone a lot longer than just 8 minutes, but we appreciate your knowledge and your sharing of resources today. So with that, I'd like to transition into our kind of next and kind of final part of our agenda today. We're a little bit behind schedule, but we built in some buffer time. So again, we're hoping to wrap up today somewhere probably around 10:40 at this point. But I'd like to introduce my colleague, Ken Zimmerman from IU13, who's going to introduce our next presenters.
Hey everyone, great to see you today. Thanks for joining us. It's my pleasure to be able to introduce to you our 2 next guest speakers. We've been working with Ira and Pam now, and Gina, with Socol Moran Partners now throughout this year in helping us to be able to really provide a robust statewide network for all of you under the student-centered learning umbrella. Both Pam and Ira have, as you heard earlier with Tim sharing, have been working with other states to be able to do this similar work. So we are so excited to have two experts with us today to be able to share a little bit with you. And I just want to take a moment to just let you know a little bit about Pam and Ira to get some background information before we move forward. So starting with Ira, he's a former Chief Technology and Innovation Officer with expertise in accessible technology, UDL, and educational equity. He's authored multiple books, including Designed to Fail and Timeless Learning, and was recognized by the Center for Digital Education as a top innovator. He has worked with educators nationally and internationally on redesigning learning spaces, technology integration, and student-centered learning. Currently, he has completed a book on the impact of co-designing learning environments with students and staff. And we have Pam. Dr. Pam Moran is the former superintendent of Albemarle County Public Schools and was Virginia's 2016 Superintendent of the Year and a finalist of the National Superintendent of the Year. She's currently the executive director of the Virginia School Consortium for Learning, leading networks for innovation learning and professional development. Committed to student-centered learning education, she advocates for learning experiences that foster collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and real-world competencies. She co-authored Timeless Learning, documenting decades of educational innovation in her former district. So again, it has been a pleasure for us to be able to connect with Pam and Ira and to invite them in to share a little bit with our network group this morning. So Pam and Ira, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you. I really appreciate the intro, Ken. And Gina sends her regrets that she can't join us today. Gina Keller is an amazing member of our team who has deep experience as well and has been connected all year long in our work with Ken and with Tim and with the team to help really think about how do you give lift to getting a network up and running, and then what do you do to really sustain networks so that you're able to maximize the potential of everybody that's participating and build capacity. So Ira, I think we're ready to get started because today what we want to do is to talk about what we have really seen, experienced, and actually have researched in the work of how do teams really provide an even deeper level of structured work to support up moving initiative and innovations across districts. So Ira, let me turn it over to you.
Well, and I just want to say at the start that, networks take many forms, and one of the first ones I watched really develop was with Pam and Gina and another woman superintendent who are all in the same region who got to constantly talk to each other about what they were trying to do to move their systems forward. Because as we begin talking here, we tend to live in silos in education. We do it within schools, we do it within school districts, we do it by separating districts apart. We do very little, that brings us all together all the time in any systemic way. When I first began working in K-12 education, I said that I thought lighthouse keepers had more peer contact during the day than teachers did in many schools, and that we weren't sharing what we were trying to do. We weren't sharing what was going on. We weren't sharing what we knew about our students, and that this, all added up to a serious problem. So when you bring people together, you get ideas, you spread ideas, you help people see past the status quo. And so we really hope that what you're building here in Pennsylvania, and we're really excited about that, is trying to get away from the isolation of feeling how alone you are, and especially in a time period when educators and education itself can feel like it's under attack. Isolation is painful. It actually really hurts. We also want to try to avoid reinventing the wheel constantly, saying, oh, I have to think about this all myself by myself right from the start, because no one's ever done this before. And Pam and I, and I'm sure many of you have gone to presentations at conferences, sometimes put on by people with lots of money and power and influence, where they're talking about their invention of something that you might have been doing for the past 30 years. And you think, why couldn't they have figured that earlier? We build capacity for change when we're together. We can strengthen it. We can reassure ourselves and support ourselves and talk through problems and move ourselves forward. We also help ourselves shift from only knowing what we know and holding on to beliefs that may not really be true or may not be true anymore. Because again, if we're all by ourselves or we're in our own little echo chamber, of these three teachers who talk in the hallway, we're not getting a lot of things flowing in from outside.
And Ira, I would add to that one of the reasons why we started doing networking inside our own school district when we worked together, and Eric Yoder, who's in here, I'm proud to say was a member of that district at one point in time, of getting people talking together, working together, sharing resources, sharing ideas, was to build that capacity. And it struck me when I first saw some of the research that was coming out about the power of teaming, and one of the early books that I read was a book called The Medici Effect, about how did the Renaissance get started. And it really got started by bringing people together in networks in small city states in Italy. And then I think about the quote from Albert Einstein where he said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And I know that educators have always existed more in silos, at least in today's world and in the last decades, than they have in collaborative teams, despite our efforts to do things like PLC at the building levels. And that one of the things that we have learned in our experience as well as research is that when people are working together, that we are better together in terms of the work that we produce than when we're working in isolation. And we believe that's true of the Pennsylvania network as well. All right, Ira.
I think all of this talks about when you have teams of teams, you find solutions. I always said I wanted the most diverse group of people around me that I could find, people with different experiences, people from different cultures, people who had different belief systems and different ideas. Because when you get that spread, you find that people see differently than you do. And when people see differently than you do and they hear differently than you do, they hear different things and see different things. And so they find solutions that that we will not do on our own. And I think one of the things that, we've seen across the country is the picture you have here is from a tiny school system in rural Nevada. I'm not sure they have 60 teachers total in the whole system. And by being part of a network that communicated back and forth across that entire state, even in a year of absolute insanity where they went through, I think, 4 superintendents, Pam, and all this sort of chaos, their design team, because they were connected across the state, just could move forward powerfully, so powerfully that they became incredible informers of everybody down to Las Vegas as they did their work. They actually convinced companies in their town to put their portraits of a learner on their vehicles in wraps that were designed by the students, which is what you're seeing here. But what we see when we do this, whether we do this in our school system itself, in our intermediate unit, in our or across our state, is that we're trying lots of different solutions. When Pam and I first put a model together of sort of formalizing a network within the system we worked in Virginia, we we realized our single system was as diverse as most states are. We had some of the wealthiest people in the world. We had some of the poorest people in the country. We had 85 languages. We had a refugee center and urban poverty and urban wealth and suburban things and military kids and etc. And within all that, we we couldn't do the same thing in every place. We had the same concepts we wanted to promote, but everybody had to do it differently. And as everybody did it differently, we just informed each other about what we saw working. And everybody's stuff shifted slightly because we were in a constant communication about trying to solve complicated problems and get ourselves moving forward.
And so when I think about the idea that as teams build, and we've got some quotes from some of the folks that have worked in teams that are part of networks, that we think about that one of the maybe the next steps for PASCL to consider is, rather than having it based on individual representation, that's been a real growing learning year, developing out your stories, that when you roll up your sleeves and you start to do work as a network around common areas of interest, focus, communities of practice model, how is it that by coming as partners or even as small teams, that you're able to work on the work of your district, but then also network your work with others? And we have an example of some quotes. This is one from Ryan Cordia. He's a principal of a brand new high school that he is starting up from scratch in Clark County, which is Las Vegas. They have about 300,000 students there. But he has found that despite the fact that he's in this huge system, that being a part of a network, that he is actually learning along with and from tiny little systems like the one Ira described, which is Douglas County, Nevada, that is a step ahead of Clark County in terms of the work they're doing with portrait implementation. So what we see and hear from people that bring teams is that we are learning with each other, and that size is less relevant than it is when we find other teams that have common areas of focus. Ira?
Well, and it really what you're also building is a support network, a just-in-time support network. One of the things that, and like in the early days of Twitter, I was in Michigan and meeting people in Pam's system in Virginia. And I watched people in those early days of Twitter, 2007, 2008, teachers reaching out sometimes at 11 o'clock at night to other teachers and saying, boy, I'm up against this. How can you help me, think this new kind of lesson through? We saw, and when you formalize the network, then people really always had the phone a friend structure, kind of thing. Like, what have you been doing? What's been going on? And when I will say that when in formalizing network, when we could build meetings where we were face to face, which is tough in any big state, it's tough in Virginia, it's tough in Pennsylvania. I'll tell you, it's pretty tough in Nevada, where people are driving sometimes 6 hours to get to an airport to be able to fly to Las Vegas or Reno. And we see this kind of thing. And in Kentucky, I think about this because we've been working with an incredibly rural school district that is literally a 3-hour drive from the nearest interstate. But they are connected into a system where, they can pull knowledge and skills together. The other thing is that often there aren't very many models for what you're doing, and we try to make that easier to reach out. When we started shifting our elementary schools to K-5 classrooms, how many public schools in the United States have done that before? Well, it's a very small group. You know, we flew our teachers to San Diego, but to look at things. But once we had done it, we had schools all across the network in Virginia coming to visit us and watch what we're
And
doing.
even from outside, such as Ken and some of his
Right. Yeah. Right. You know,
Lancaster.
so
But
it,
I think that the other thing too, Ira, is that when you look at the quote from Susan here, who was in Shelby County, it's an incredible leader in the state of Kentucky, that they could have put themselves on a pedestal and said, hey, we don't need this network. But the reality is, as Susan says here, and I think the operative word in her statement is the word we, because the team as a we team is able to really learn together. And then rather than going back as a singleton, they go back as a team, and they have a team support around the work that they've been focusing on in order to continue to build out. And so she would say, even though we may have been considered a leader in Kentucky, we were still learning, and it was a fabulous opportunity for us to be a support to others, because we are all in this together. And I think that that's one of the real keys that we've seen.
and again, you know, we have Liz Calvert, who's the principal of a big high school in Fairfax, Virginia. So, you know, a huge, how many students do they have, Pam? 260,000, something like
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, whatever. It's a lot of kids, but it's across the state that she has found a lot of her support.
And
That
she's a member of a team that includes central office, some teachers, key leaders in Fairfax as a district, but she's a part of that team when she comes to Valen.
Want to introduce this, Pam, quickly?
Yeah, Tom Smith, we wanted to just give you a few live words. Tom Smith is bringing some words from Valen to you about the work in Louisa County as a member of the Valen Network, the Virginia Leads Innovation Network, in terms of the impact that he believes that it's had in his district to have a team that's a member of that bigger network. So you can go ahead and kick that up. And he's a director of instruction.
Being a part of the Lead Innovation Network is going to be very useful for our schools in terms of focusing on the priorities we need to address. It's going to provide us with the opportunity to have conversations within our division that are going to help us to reflect on not only where we are, but also where we need to be, and to come up with solutions to help us get to where we need to be. Being a part of this community is also going to help us because we're going to be able to collaborate with other divisions around the state to not only see about shared experiences, but to get different ideas for how we can reach the goals we want to reach.
All right. So thank you to Tom for joining us today.
You know, I'll just add there that all the video for Valen is, you know, again, is a modeling thing, is done by a student media team from that school system, from that small rural school system. That's you know, all of, you know, the thing of there's so much modeling that goes on within the network experience. So.
And so we'd like to invite you to become a part of the modeling right now. And we're going to break out into some groups. Ken and Tim will help to get that facilitated. But we want you to work as a team of teams for a little bit of time here to answer these 3 questions. And it's going to be facilitated. We'd like for you to spend about 10 minutes in that. And then we're going to come out and have just a minute for people to maybe put in chat some takeaways from your conversations. So I'm going to turn it back over to Tim to get us into those breakout rooms. And here are the 3 questions. You know, what do you see as a benefit to maybe working in teams rather than as individuals? We'd like for you to think about that. We'd like for you to think about how do you become more effective as a Pennsylvania network, if there's strategies you think that the team that does the planning should consider. And also, what's your priority as a member for the work that you think is important in terms of membership here? So those are the 3 areas of focus. All right, Tim.
All right, thanks so much, Pam. We're going to open those rooms real quickly, and we'll keep it to about 8 minutes, I believe. But you're going to be automatically assigned to one of 8 rooms, and a member of our team will also be in there. But in the chat, I put a link to a shared document that anyone can access to, where we can jot some notes down, and you can see those questions again that you can talk about that Pam had referenced. So we'll see you back here in about 8 minutes. Everybody back here. So welcome back to our main room. I know that time probably went very quickly, but you know, I'm sure there were some good conversations that got started in the chat. I just put in a link again to the shared document that you can go back and look at some of the other things that were discussed. Any of our kind of folks on our team maybe want to share something that was discussed that was really highlighted? Well, maybe you can take one or two folks to share something that was discussed in the breakout room that perhaps was really meaningful.
In breakout room number 4, we discussed possibly having a database of where districts are in this process, like who does a really good job with PD or who. So that was a discussion that we had. We put that in the notes, but I'll let any other breakout rooms talk now.
Thanks, Melissa. Holly, I think you had something to share.
Yeah, so in our group, we were in breakout room 2. We were talking about accountability of this idea. We're hearing great ideas and we're hearing great ways to do implementation, but it's hard that when you go back to your district or your job to then make that happen. So an idea around accountability. So there's kind of a reporting out or being held accountable by a peer was discussed. And just making sure spreading the word and the message at the district level, what the vision will be, and making sure it doesn't reside with just one person. So really building that network locally and statewide.
Absolutely. Thank you, Holly. Anyone else from our team want to share out quickly?
Yeah, so in our breakout room, we talked about, you know, when you're collaborating with others, you might have an intended goal, but other supplemental ideas can come out, right? Like you could talk about things or get ideas that you might not even have, that might not be the intention of what you're meeting about, but just other great ideas to share and network. And we were talking about the visit to California to see the Moonshot program, but they also had electric scooters, a 4-day teacher schedule, like different things that weren't even necessarily the intention, that were really, really cool.
Great.
I love that, Sam. That's exactly what happens when you start cross-pollinating. I think about networks as being somewhat like having a garden with a lot of diverse flowers in it, and the bees are pollinating and moving around, and that's what a great network does. I would also just, Tim, say that I would love to have anybody that didn't speak out but would like to put something in chat that was a takeaway from the breakouts, to just put those in the chat right now. And just, we thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Absolutely. Please take advantage of that, as Pam requested there in the chat. If you have something you'd like to share out to the group, we welcome you to do that. Thank you, Pam and Ira, for sharing your wisdom with us, and we'll continue to be working with them to continue to grow our network. And I was just kind of referenced in the sharing is about some of these site visits and how powerful they can be. And I'll just point you back to the agenda, because we do have some PA student-centered site visits upcoming. We have one on March 11th, we have one on April 1st, and we have one on April 9th. So I was wondering if I think somebody from potentially one or each of those might want to share a little bit about what's coming up at each of those. Tracy, was it you who wanted to share about the first one?
I'm here. Yes, the World of Learning site visit, the virtual site visit. We actually have Lauren McMinn on here, and I'm going to ask her to unmute and share a little bit about the storyboarding and what we are anticipating for that visit.
Thanks, Tracy. Yes, my name is Lauren McMinn. I'm supervisor at the World of Learning. If you're not familiar with our program, we are an online program that helps school districts find teachers in hard to staff areas. So we had our roots in world languages. And so that's exactly what we'll be showing at our site visit next week. We'll be demoing or showing an ASL 2 class and a Spanish 2 class. And the reason for the visit is to show you our approach to curriculum. We connected with Heidi Hayes Jacobs and Alison Zamuda 2 years ago. And they have basically written a book about storyboarding curriculum, and it's how we design our online courses that are built by our teachers to create a compelling narrative thread, in their words, that students can kind of want to know what happens next instead of isolated units that are kind of just put together in a sequence in a year. So we're going to show you what our asynchronous portion of the course looks like, and then you'll get to visit the live portion where you'll see the students actually interacting with their instructors. And hopefully you'll find something there that you can implement in your district in some way, some cross-pollination hopefully happening there.
Great, thank you, Lauren. Next visit we have coming up is the Manheim Central School District. And a host for that will be my colleague, Megan Smith here at IU13. Megan, you want to talk briefly about that visit?
Yeah, I'm really excited that this has come together. We've been working with Manheim Central, who from the beginning has said, yes, I can definitely share. So we're excited to have a date for that April 1st. The Manheim Central crew is on here also. So if there's anything that I'm missing, feel free to unmute and hop on too. That is on our agenda, an invitation for April 1st. And this one is really unique because they are opening up the entire district. So you have the opportunity to visit an elementary school or a middle school or a high school based on whatever level is interesting to you.
Yeah,
And I see them pop up.
Thanks, Megan. So yeah, our goal is to really highlight some personalized learning experiences. So as we develop our agenda for the day, just really being able to hone in on specific personalized experiences at our elementary, our middle, and our high school. They will look different on a K-12 level, but we're hoping to be able to spotlight so many different classrooms and experiences, offer some time to start together and explain our journey and through the process and what that's looked like, you know, the good, the bad, the ugly, and then be able to see the personalized experiences in action, and then being able to come together at the end to debrief all together, just to talk as a group, to be able to hear from some of the teachers in the classrooms, and just time to connect. So that's really the goal of the visit.
Great. Thank you, Crystal and team, for joining us today. Thank you, Megan. And one other visit to highlight is to Warren County School District on April 9th. And is Misty Weber still on the call here? I think she wanted to speak about it.
Yeah, I know we're like so far away from everything and most populations, so we're a smaller school district. However, we wanted to make it worth your while. So we're going to meet at the Career Center, which houses several different programs. So we wanted to highlight our Career Center as well. It has 13 different programs. They have welding, early childhood, auto body, a lot of different hands-on type of learning for students. And they've incorporated dual enrollment opportunities and a lot of competition between district, state, and national levels. With that, in that same building, we also have our STEM Academy, which is completely separate from the Career Center. And with that, we've done a lot of work in 2 career pathways. We have arts and communication, and engineering and tech. So we have students working on, of course I get a call. We have students working on anything from storyboards with film and editing, to drone certification, dual enrollment opportunities. We have a student who's actually working on his pilot certification and getting his flight hours through our STEM Academy. So those are 2, which we also wanted to incorporate our virtual academy. We have worked with a lot of districts across the state. So we wanted to talk about what we do and why we do it and how it's helped our district, especially with scheduling being such a small district. And then last, we also have in the same building a program called Strive, and it is designed for IEP students that need more life-based skills. And it is very student focused, and there's called a PASCL lab that actually teaches them hands-on learning to be able to accomplish. It's all master-based competency learning, as they have their own little cafe and life learning. So it's a really neat program, and we would love to be able to show all of those programs to make it worth your while, and even offer you a culinary arts feast for lunch. So hopefully that helped.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Misty. So all of that information is there. So you have options on the western side of the state, on the eastern side of the state, and even a virtual option to participate in a site visit. So again, we've given you so much information today. We've given you some great storytelling from some different folks around not only our state, but around the country here. But there's also, beyond just the site visits, some other events that are happening around the state that we're going to continue to highlight through our newsletters. So I'll just speak to the one here happening at IU13 in June. We're really excited to have Catlin Tucker come. She's going to be with us on June 17th to have a time where she's going to share some of her expertise around blended and student-centered and rotational learning. She'll be here, and we're hoping to have some districts share out some of the work that they're doing as well. So we're excited to have her come to IU13 in June. Eric, if you're still on, I know you have an event coming up virtually in just a few weeks.
Yeah, we have a great opportunity, a book study on the text Empower by AJ Giuliani and John Spencer. Give us an opportunity to dive into discussions about strategies teachers are using in classrooms to allow students to take ownership of content that they are consuming, build a little bit more space for student voice and choice in the classroom, and things like that. I will also share that it's a free opportunity to join the book study. You just have to purchase the book. And our first 10, I actually have a couple registrations already, so about 8 more will get a free copy of the book. So it could be really free if you would like to join. We'll be beginning that on March 18th. There's a link to register on the flyer.
Great. And I'll just mention the other one happening at IU1 in June as well, an environmental education summit happening there called Learning Without Walls. So just to wrap us up today, because again, I know we've been late on time. We were hoping to go to 10:30, and thank you so much for sticking with us through all of this. We do have resources that continue to grow in our OER Commons group. We'll post resources from today. We'll put the recording from today in there, as well as the agenda and any contact information for any of the events that are happening. You'll be able to find them in there. So you can look for, again, a newsletter from us coming out in March, which summarizes all of this information, because I know you have busy schedules, and I'll go back and many things will take precedence. So we're hoping you can revisit some of these opportunities around events happening around the state, or site visits that you could potentially take advantage of. So we look forward, though, to having you back together in June at our last meeting. Some of you may be done with your school year at that point. We would encourage you to bring your teams to that meeting, because as we speak to some of the aspects of the things that we talked about today, we're hoping you could bring your team to that meeting and maybe go away from that meeting with some takeaways for your team to work through as you go into the summer and into next school year, as you think about scheduling and you think about professional development and some of those structures. So that's one of the asks that we'll have of you, is to kind of identify who your team is, and hopefully you'll be able to join us when you come back with us on June 5th. So I think if there's anything else from our team that you'd like to share, I'll pause for a minute. Anything else from our team? I don't think so. So again, thank you so much for everybody who stuck with us throughout this whole time today. We appreciate your attendance today, and we wish you a great day and rest of your week. We will see you next time in June. Thanks, everybody.
Great job, Tim. And group, but Tim's the MC, so